Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of this Sacred Journey podcast. This is part 2 of the interview with Keith, the Cacao Shaman. So if you haven't listened to the first part, I highly recommend going back and listening to that one as well. And for those of you who don't know who Keith is, he is a man that played a very key and important role in the reintroduction of cacao in the Western world as a medicinal and ceremonial medicine. So this whole interview was recorded a few months before Keith passed away. And this is part of the legacy that he left us with all his wisdom and his story. So it's a really beautiful podcast, and I really hope you get to enjoy. And if you love cacao as much as I do, I really feel like this will really expand your connection to cacao, but also your awareness and the understanding of this medicine in a deeper way. So in the previous episode, in the interview with Keith, he was sharing with us his story about how he connected to the spirit of cacao in the first time that he had an encounter with this medicine. And then he goes ahead and tells us his whole journey into how he ended up becoming sort of the steward, and part of his mission was to reintroduce cacao in a ceremonial way to the Western world. So for the last 20 to 30 years of his life, he dedicated his entire life to the study and the sharing of the wisdom of this medicine. He also goes ahead and shares with us myths and legends about cacao, and he also dives deeper into the history of cacao. And finally, we speak about the deep nuances of cultural appropriation, which is a big subject right now in the collective that is very important to address. And in this second part episode, Keith gets to speak to us and share more about his personal story and who he was and what he used to do before he even got introduced to the medicine of cacao. He shares with us his work with empath work, and he gives us some advice on how to identify if you're an empath and how to work with this gift if you do have it. As well as he gets to dive very deep into the scientific and healing properties of cacao regarding mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual levels. He even tells us a little bit about how to let go of the SSRIs if you're dealing with depression with the support of cacao, as well as how to use cacao to prevent heart conditions, depression, diabetes, cancer, and many more illnesses. So this podcast is incredibly educational, and I highly recommend sitting with this and really listening to every single part of it, especially if you're looking to work with cacao in a way that will support your health, but also if you're looking to work with cacao and support others in their journey by becoming a cacao ceremonialist. So I'm sending you so much love. I hope you enjoy, and take care. I have a question. I wanted to ask you, last time I saw you, you shared a little bit about what you used to do before you started your cacao journey and how you started working with empaths work when back in the day when you were working with people with AIDS and people with that pretty much became your training. And I ask you this question, I ask you, like, who was your teacher? Because you were referring as, like, you were speaking about your teacher, like, my teacher said this. And I asked, who was your teacher? And you mentioned that you've never had an incarnated teacher. Your teachers are always spirit, direct spirits.
In the late 90s, I started as a geologist.
Okay.
And then increasingly I became interested in healing, became an herbalist, a body worker, and a pressure point worker. In the late 1980s, I joined a meditation and channeling group that was run. I didn't know, that's not really the word, but there were several channels in the group, and they channeled a small group of other dimensional beings. Some of them would be called enlightened masters because they had a lifetime here on Earth, like in Tibet, when they enlightened. and other ones were beings that had never had a physical body. And one of them was basically a composite being.
What does that mean?
Was several beings appearing to us as one being.
Wow, never heard of that.
To make it less confusing. We've got all these different teachers, and to make it less confusing. And the group lasted 7 years. And taught me the basics of inner processing, the basics of relationship work, the basis of pain body work, a great deal of the basis of how reality works, and what you do to have a good time here, how you can change things. All of those kinds of things. And I eventually became one of the channels, although I preferred energy, often through sound, rather than words. When that group finished, and it was time for it to be over, but when it finished, I had a tremendous thirst for working with people, doing sessions, doing what I had learned to gain experience. So, as my climbing friends, caver friends from years ago used to say, good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. So I had to get out there and get a lot of experience, and I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, famous New Age town, and I got bored real fast. The spirituality in Asheville in the early 90s was, or the middle 90s was, in your head. If I'd have been a Buddhist, I'd have done great. But I was into the emotional realities, and most of the spiritual people could not feel any of that stuff. So I ended up in Manhattan, New York City, working with mostly HIV positive gay men and a few HIV positive black women. Wow. And they this was back when there was no cure for AIDS. And when good old Dr. Fauci was doing exactly the same thing he did with COVID, making sure no one could get drugs that worked, and giving everybody AZT to kill them. That's what he was doing back then, and you can find lots on the internet about that. Exactly the same thing he did with COVID. Get rid of ivermectin, get rid of hydroxychloroquine, get rid of vitamin D, put everything down, and give you what became remdesivir to kill you. In England, they use midazolam to kill you. Anyway, the HIV positive people in New York City called it AIDS, Accelerated Identity Development Syndrome. So you got this death sentence. You know you're going to be dead in 4 years, because everybody's dead in 4 years. And so you immediately throw out of yourself a lot of the bullshit. You have a little bullshit argument with your sweetheart? I ain't got no more time for that. I got 4 years to live, and I'm going to spend it with you. And so you just, it's like an advanced monastery. You just throw all this stuff out because it's absolutely irrelevant to only going to live 4 years. Now, also, you develop hypervigilance, because you don't die from the AIDS, you die from the opportunistic infection, which, with your compromised immune system, just takes over your body and kills you. And so they all became what was called hypervigilant. They could tell they were coming down from a cold a couple days before the normal person can tell. So guess what? They could feel the energy I was working with, and I could get the feedback that I needed to understand and build trust in what I knew I could do. But knowing you can do it and getting the good feedback is one thing, but having people talk about what's going on is, I needed the validation, because here I'm doing something and I don't know anybody else that's doing it anywhere. And so I need a little positive reinforcement there to build trust in what I'm doing, and that's what I got. I also got more offers of marriage than I've ever gotten from the ladies.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I was straight, and but I had a really good time, and it was all for free, and I got a lot of spin-offs with other. I mean, look what I'm doing. I am working with the most creative people in Manhattan, the most creative people in the most creative center, with theater, art, everything, and architecture, and all of this. And so I'm getting an absolutely astonishing education in how to work with creative people, how to get them out of their blocks, how to open things up in them.
Wow.
All of that. Because, of course, just because they're going to be dead in 4 years, they especially don't want to stop writing their play.
Yeah.
Or whatever they're doing.
Wow.
So,
accelerated evolution.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I got a tremendous education in that. And also, they developed, and in general, their sweethearts developed, because of this emergency situation they're in, a really well-developed bullshit detector. You could not give them a psychological theory, platitude. They just right away. They had absolutely no use for that. Basically psychological bullshit.
Yeah.
That wasn't keyed directly into them, that didn't understand them, that didn't understand what was going on with them, even if you'd never met them before. So I had to align with what these days most people call the fifth dimension, where, as my teacher said, I wasn't being trained to be a channel, I was trained to get it myself. And so this level of reality, where everything is just known, you can get any knowing, any understanding, any vibration, resonance, and frequency, and increasingly any manifestation you want, and you don't go get it. It doesn't come to you, it's there instantly. And so I had to learn to trust that. Actually, that wasn't too hard to trust, because the information was really good. What was hard to trust was when there was nothing there. And then I had to go, okay, something's going on here that is really different than what I think is going on. So I'm not being given anything until I figure out, what's up. And that took a little trust building, because you're used to getting this deep psychological information on somebody, boom, 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 and then there's nothing there.
Wow.
I've been abandoned. Whatever. So I learned. It was amazing.
Wow, what a training.
It was intense.
Yes.
And at a certain point, I finished with that. And I was back, even while I was doing that, every couple of weeks I would go back. I lived about 5 hours west in central Pennsylvania. And I would go back and mow my mom's lawn and, fix things and what you do for your mom. And when I was back in that town full time, I got together with one of the people, brilliant psychic channel aware person. And she lived about 5 miles out of town in a old farmhouse up on the 3rd floor. Rest had been turned into apartments. And I went out, pedaled my bike out every day for a year and a half. And we would sit across from each other and basically just go, okay, who's here? Who's here to visit us today? And beings from religions that I didn't even know existed came and visit us. We did all kinds of amazing things. Again, learning to connect. And then I was ready to blow it off for a while, and I ended up in Arizona hiking for a year. Didn't do any sessions. That was fun. And right after that, the number one thing on my bucket list, they call it, was to go to Palenque.
Palenque, wow.
Because I had had a connection during the group in the late 80s and early 90s with the head honcho in the 700s of Palenque, Cacao Shaman. I had quite a connection with him.
Wow.
And so I wanted to go to Palenque. And I spent 3 months in Palenque and, learned how to sneak into the ruins for free and, do all of that kind of stuff. And basically found out that Palenque wasn't, or Cacao wasn't there.
Cacao? That's his name?
Cacao Shaman.
Cacao Shaman.
Yeah, I think he died in 749.
Wow.
Something about there. I might not have that exactly right. And so at that point, it was April, early April. It was getting really hot and muggy, and I'd stand under the outdoor shower, and 10 minutes later, I'd be covered with sweat. And I don't do very well in climates like that. I wilt. And so it was, okay, what do I do? Go back to the States? Go to a higher elevation in north in Mexico? Or do I go to this place that I've been talking with people about and looked up in the guidebooks called San Marcos?
Whoa, even back then people were speaking about San Marcos?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
there were people at Palenque who lived in San Marcos and had come for visits and maybe some magic mushrooms and some, things like that. And I got to know a number of them, and I was really debating on what to do, and there was an Israeli couple there, and they said, hey, we want to go to the lake. We'll give you a 3-day tour of San Cristobal if you take us to the lake.
Wow.
And I said, basically, pack up.
Yes, wow.
And so I got here on April 12 in an absolute downpour.
Wow.
Pouring rain. Couldn't see anything. I was, I'm going to come over the edge of the mountain and I'm going to see the lake down there below me. There was nothing to see. Anyway, I found a place to hang my hammock And I will, I promise. I'll get to the empath thing in a minute.
Yeah.
I found a place to hang my hammock and park my truck in across the lake where I drop the people off. And I met a woman on the street. And her energy hit me. And I thought maybe she's a local shaman or something. And definitely not romantic. But I started talking with her in my rather broken Spanish, but we did all right. And I found out that she was a delivery person for the Diego's chocolate business, the little tubes about this long.
The little tube,
like
the
cigars.
Yes.
Where the children still hand color the labels with markers.
Wow. Okay.
And so the next day was her day to go to San Marcos and restock the restaurants and the tiendas that carried their little wooden racks with all the different flavors of chocolate. And so I knew she was going to have to take the boat, and it was going to cost her money, and and she's an indigenous person, she's not rich. And I said, hey, I'll give you a ride if you'll show me where San Marcos is. I knew I could find it. You just ask and you find your way, and it's only 3 towns over, so it's not a big deal. And so she said wonderful, and we met at 9 o'clock the next morning and went to San Marcos, and she took me right where I was going. She knew the house where I was going to hang my hammock in their yard.
Wow.
And I hung my hammock for a couple of weeks until I found a place to rent. And then I moved. So in 2008, I went to mostly London, but a little Brighton and a little like that, for 5 months. Just on I'm just going to go to London. I know a few people there, and I'm going to find a place to crash, and I'm going to do cacao ceremonies.
By this point, you were already working with cacao since 2003.
Yeah.
So it was 5 years of you already studying the medicine.
Had active ceremonies going.
Here in your porch?
Yes. And so I went to London, and I was doing a ceremony down behind an organic restaurant at King's Cross. Somebody here probably knows where that is.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I did as I did in most of my ceremonies, I did an empath training about people who are sponges for other people's energy. I did not know the word empath. I just called them sponges. And I'd been working with them for some time. And after the ceremony was over and everybody was just, socializing and having some food from the restaurant, a woman came up to me and she said, "Do you know that the people you're talking about as sponges are called empaths?" And I said, "No." And so I think I stayed up until 3 a.m. that night researching empath on the web. And there were I was so excited. And there were about 7 different websites that talked about empaths. And it was such a disappointment. It was such a huge letdown because they were all about protection. You have to protect yourself from other people's energies. And, well, there's a famous saying, I think it comes from A Course in Miracles, that defense is a prayer for attack.
I've heard that.
Dear universe, I want to protect myself from XYZ. Oh, that's your fun? We'll send you lots more of it because you just said this is how you want to play with the universe, by protecting yourself. Anyway, so I had a whole different approach to the empath thing.
The kitty.
Oh yeah, and I realized at that time that it was it wasn't just something that I did, that I had realized from myself, that I had changed in myself, and I was now sharing with others. It was something that a lot of people understood, because these websites on empaths, even though they didn't get it, at least from what I understood, were, they weren't just from England or from the States, or they were from everywhere. And so I realized, okay, this is a global phenomenon, so I started to write a little bit about it and things like that. And I started getting more and more and more information and detail, and I had a visit from Archangel Michael, otherwise known as Ganesha in the Hindu.
Wow.
Well, Ganesha is the remover of obstacles, and Archangel Michael has the sword of truth that he uses to cut you free from what you're ready to let go of. So they are metaphors for the same energy. But I started working with Michael. He started to visit on a regular basis, and I learned just level after level after level of the empath stuff. And it's all up on the web now. You can go to YouTube and type in empath training Keith, and it'll come right up at the top with my little mug. A drawing of me from about 15 years ago, actually. 20. And so I was able to put together a whole training, and then it just blew up here.
Wow.
We would have 80% of the people on the porch be empaths. Twice a week after week after week. It like magnetized them in from all over the world. And you were here for part of that.
Yes.
It was just, we practically did an empath training every week because there were so many people. All of whom, basically they were drowning in other people's shit. And many of them having an extremely hard time of it. Most of them having it block, who they were, their gifts, their abilities, their talents, their whatever. And they would just say, I'm a very good healer, but I can't do it because I end up so much stuff inside me. They love it. But then it takes me a day and a half to get back to normal, and that's with one client. And so the empath training has some lecture instruction. It's got some meditations to help you understand how to move energy, and then it's got a bunch of stuff on the higher dimensional energy parts of being an empath, and the why you're working with Archangel Michael, you're working with Ganesha. There's a Buddhist being, but the name is so long I can't remember it.
Okay.
So, who work in that religious system with these energies to help people clear things. And, Michael told me that, if you look him up on the web, he is the the leader of God's armies, you know? And this is with people that got to make everything into a war, you know? Because that's where the planet's head is right now. And so Michael is always, you know, you see all the old woodcuts and stuff, or etchings, Michael is out in front of the battle with his sword. Whew. And Michael's telling me, what if God's armies are not about a war? What if they are about cleaning out people's pain bodies? So they can be who they are, so they can do the healing, so they can be part of groups without sponging it up and sucking it down. What if they're about helping other people clear? You, as part of God's army, have been studying this stuff since you were 1 to 2 years old. By eating the stuff in your family and then culture and school and all of that. And you're now one of the most highly trained healers on the planet. But you gotta quit internalizing it. Assume that, you know, you study moving it out of someone into you, then you study it inside, and then you study how to get it out of you. Well, at a certain point, one would assume you've got all the education you need. You've studied all this. You've studied people's pain, fear, anxiety, distrust, jealousy, anger, you know, envy, everything. At a certain point, it's time to stop eating it and start moving it for people. So that's what the empath training is about, is a how to do that.
And I have a question here. Is the empath training teaches you how not to take it in and instead transmit it in a different way, or how to take it in and move it through you?
Well, there's 3 meditations. The first one takes it in, and then we disappear it from you because it's all being, you know, run by higher dimensional beings. The second one, you bring it to in front of you, like a meter in front of you, and then send it on up to be transmuted by higher dimensional beings. The third one, you call for it to leave them directly, going up, going down to the Mother Earth, wherever it's going to be cleaned up, and so you don't have it coming toward you, and in the process, we have people experience things that they're holding in their body, leave and join the rest of it off to cleanup. Do things like that. It's not either complex or complicated, and people arrive at the place where they understand that if they eat it, they made the free will choice to do so. And there's nothing around here you can do about a free will choice, except change it.
Yeah.
So it's been a beautiful journey. I don't really do an empath training anymore. Just send them to YouTube. Yeah, send them to YouTube and
I got lucky because I experienced it firsthand in the.
And
I have a question about the empaths. Do you feel like every human being is born with empathic qualities, and it's something that
some people don't do it. They've got something else to do here.
Okay. And some people do.
And of course, I realized very early that having this kind of a training that no one else had I got a very skewed sample of people coming to the porch because they were just drawn here. I mean, so many people would come in and go, I don't know why I'm here, blah, 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 you know, but there they were. So I don't know why I came. I don't even know why I came to San Marcos. I came to your porch.
Destiny.
There's one of our little kitty cats. So I just, basically accepted that as that was normal. And so because I understood I was dealing with literally a distorted population, because the people that were being magnetized in here because they needed it, I can't give a percentage of people, of children who are empathic, other than a lot are. And I find people learn a lot faster now than they did 15 years ago. The energy on the planet, people's inherent ability, if they have any interest at all, is much higher. People get it faster. We have them play a little bit with, what it feels like to take it in and what it feels like not to take it in. So they can, get that experience and get the messaging system, if they're at a group something, get the messaging system and make another choice rather than to, it was a lot of fun. I went for years talking to the people that ran kirtans in this town, because you go to a kirtan, you start chanting the names of God, and shit is coming out and flying all over the room, everywhere. And of course, a bunch of it is going in to the empaths. And after about 10 minutes, the empaths start getting out of their seat and backing up against the wall. And in another 5 minutes, they're leaving. Because the place is absolutely filthy dirty, and they're sucking it in. And I would tell these the people that ran the kirtans, listen, you're hurting people. It's going to take them a day and a half to get themselves cleaned out, if they have a way to do that. And for a lot of them, it's going to be sickness or depression or pain or something like that. And you need to call in higher dimensional beings to take whatever people are releasing into another dimension. And, my teacher said, hey, if you don't ask, our hands are tied. We can't come in and help you because that would violate your free will not to have us there, not to have help.
And how do you call them in? Just
by intention? Ask.
Okay.
And especially if you ask as a part of the, shall we say, group meditation at the beginning of the group. As a part of the
opening.
Yeah, ceremony. As a part of the opening, where basically the whole group asks together, or at least because the person running the kirtan is talking about it, they have a consensual agreement. That's what we do here, that sort of thing. Then it's fairly simple, and they'll be there and they'll keep the space nice and clean, and you don't burden the empaths with junk that other people are letting go. I mean, that is the whole idea of a kirtan, is to raise your vibration, at least as far as I know. And it works. But when you do that, there's going to be stuff leaving you, especially if everybody's doing all this extremely sacred chanting, toning, words, whatever you want to call it. They're going to be they're going to be letting go of stuff.
And this applies to everything, right? Not just kirtans, but ecstatic dances or whatever kind of ceremony. Every time we gather in prayer,
especially
we elevate.
group breathwork sessions.
Group breath, yes.
Which can be really, really dirty.
Yeah.
If the person, I mean, they do free group breathwork sessions to get clients.
Yeah.
But if they don't call that in,
it just goes all over the place.
Oh yeah, it's a mess. There's shit flying all over, and there's a lot of people, because of the breathing, who are wide open. And if they are naturally an empath, they're going to be taking on a portion of that. I used to play cleanup after group breathwork sessions a long time ago, because people would come out of a group breathwork session really fucked up. Excuse my language. I mean, they'd be messed up. Other people would be flying.
Sharon, thank you so much for sharing your path, like from the beginning. Like it's been very great to hear about, because I've never heard that part of you. Like I've known you for years, but I've never heard what you were doing before Cacao, how you even got here. Like I've never heard the details of the story, and it's been very fascinating to hear, like everything, like even your path before.
Yeah. It basically went from a university education in geology.
Yeah.
And then Then I went off to be with my friends in southern Texas who were doing cave exploring in Mexico, finding and exploring the biggest caves in Mexico. And that was quite the adventure. I invented the equipment that cavers still use to explore deep pits. I set international records. I did things, I went a lot of places where no human being had ever been before. It was wild.
And you still are doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Well, I have this problem where I have always been, throughout my entire life, ahead of the curve. I got into alternative medicine in the 1970s and realized how medicine and the pharmaceutical industry worked, and realized when you get 3 people a week that go into their hospital, into the hospital for their ovarian cyst surgery. They've been diagnosed at the gynecologist 6 weeks earlier. Had the sonogram. Okay, they see the cyst, and they schedule an appointment with the hospital when the surgeons, the operating room will be available. It takes 6 weeks, and for some serendipitous reason, that's how long it took to dematerialize an ovarian, fallopian, or uterine cyst with herbs.
Wow.
6 weeks.
Wow.
And so you'd tell the ladies, make sure they retest you before they cut you open.
Wow.
And so they'd retest them. Mm-hmm. And the cyst wasn't there. It was gone. Wow. Or whatever kind of growth it was seemed to be very, you know, I lived in the town that was one of the 10 biggest universities in the country. It had 30,000 undergraduates, so there were a lot of women. Mm-hmm. And as an herbalist, I saw an absolutely huge amount of, the old books call it female troubles, and you throw in genitourinary stuff, cystitis and fire water, as I used to call it, burning urine. Mm-hmm. And all of these things, I had a lot of experience with that. And so they go back to the hospital for their surgery. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't find it.
Wow.
And there were weeks where I sent 3 people to the hospital, or that was their appointment. Mm-hmm. Never did a doctor ask, what did you do?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask. What herbs were you giving?
And common herbs that I picked in the woods and fields that are in all the books.
Like which ones?
Mugwort, tansy, several others that are a little more exotic. You got to go into some kind of swamp or something like that for them. Mm-hmm. And I would tailor it to the individual woman because everybody's different. Mm-hmm. But and even when the woman volunteered the information, mm-hmm. I went to an herbalist.
And they still wouldn't ask?
Nope.
They don't care?
Not interested at all.
Oh, wow.
And I came to, understand. They're interested in disease, not health. Mm-hmm. They don't give a shit about health.
It's a business, right? It's not all doctors, I gotta say.
Yeah,
I've met some doctors that are really...
And so have I. Mm-hmm. But most of them, and it's a whole lot worse today.
It's more like...
if you're a good doctor today, they will take your license away.
Yeah. I've seen that.
There's no other way. And
I've personally met doctors through this COVID thing that are going against what the big pharma is saying, but they have to be careful not to get caught. So they've been telling me, when my mom was dealing with COVID directly, they would be like, don't do this, don't do that. Like pretty much what big pharma is telling us to do, they were going against that and telling us that doesn't work, do this instead. But pretty much don't let anybody know that I'm telling you this.
Right.
Because it would put their license in danger. And that was to me very mind-blowing to see how controlled they are, even to practice what they're doing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And basically all it takes is a little money from somewhere to the medical boards, mm-hmm. and a few threats, mm-hmm. and you'll do what we say, and you'll enforce it on the doctors, and you'll fire doctors for using ivermectin or
exactly
recommending vitamin D. For goodness sakes. Anyway,
yep.
I went through that.
Yeah.
In the 70s and 80s of seeing what a scam cancer was, of watching babies die because the doctor said, oh, you have no idea what kind of harm those herbs could do. You better get that child off those herbs right away, and the child's dead in 4 weeks. When you work with somebody and you got a 6-month-old baby, and the baby mm-hmm. is having 150 grand mal epileptic seizures a day, and you start working with the child, and you get some herbs into him, you get him, with a child that young, you make up a very strong tea. You pour it in the the little baby-sized tub, with some nice warm water. And you put the kid in the tub with a rubber ducky. And it goes right in the body. And in a week, you get that kid down to 20 seizures a day. Where if you're right there, looking at the kid, you can see its eyelids flutter for 5 seconds. That's it. 5-second eyelid flutter. Both parents are professors at the university. They're going to the best medical hospital in the state for the treatment for their child. And the doctors literally tell the parents, while they're telling them, on the one hand, we can't give him any more medication than we're giving him now, or we'll destroy his liver, which you can't do. But they also tell the parents, you better get that child off whatever he's taking. You have no idea what kind of harm it will do. And they do. And the grand mals return, and the child dies. And they don't get it. They don't see it at all. And you can't go up to them and say, hey, you just murdered your child. Do you understand that? Screen drops down in front of their face. There's no point in touching it. The denial or the cognitive dissonance or the whatever just completely shuts them out. And that's the problem we got right now. Basically, globally, well, especially in the Western countries, is that people just can't see it. And they go to their mainstream media, and that's their truth. They think that government is there to help them, and oh well.
Yeah.
It's quite a... Anyway, my basic understanding is this, while it all makes me cry, and I do send energy out to the highest good of the insanity that's out there. We've got a lot of stuff on this planet. A lot more than just the corruption that needs to be cleared.
Yeah.
And so it's going to come up, and it's going to hit the fan, and it's going to be a shit show. It's going to be all over the place.
It already is.
Yeah. It's barely getting started.
Oh my God.
They are being very, very careful about several subjects, one of which is the child trafficking, the pedophilia, and the satanic stuff. They're being very, very careful not to let that out to the mass public yet. Because it is going to shake up a lot of people.
Yeah.
So anyway, I get to live down here where there aren't any chemtrails,
Yes.
Even though we've got a lot of community sentiment about appropriation and people who think that the houses and everything that the gringos have built should just be theirs. Because this is their place. It doesn't matter if they sold the land or anything like that and did it legally. That doesn't matter. It belongs to them. And the Westerners don't have a right to it. that's where they are. And I can certainly understand that. They see Westerners with successful businesses. They're not going to start a business. They don't do that in this community. They wait for somebody else to start a business and then hire them. And then they think they should own the business. It's quite a journey.
Yeah. It is a challenge.
Well, I started here with an unlocked door. Never locked it. With fences that, I mean, anybody could walk through.
Yeah.
And that had to change. I'm sorry about that. It's not my preference. You know, back in the early 1970s, before the CIA-sponsored army came here and started killing people. Do you know they killed all the midwives?
No.
All of them.
Oh my God.
Well, midwives have community importance. They could organize revolutionaries, kill them, and they did. And in my early years here, I was involved with a woman who was retraining indigenous midwives. She was a traditional midwife.
Wow.
And she was retraining.
Wow.
Or training, not retraining.
Yeah.
She was training women to be midwives. And because there weren't any. They were all murdered.
Wow.
Forget where I was going with that. Anyway.
But like with that subject, like I feel like that's so present here with the colonization. You know, that happened many thousands of years ago, but it's still present. Like I hadn't been back in town in 4 years, and I heard recently that 3 years ago, Atata got burned, like in the nearby town.
No, way over in eastern Guatemala, but
because they were practicing their tradition. They were.
Well, one of the members of a local family got sick and died. And they blamed the Tata for the death. Because he was supposed to heal them, but he didn't, so they burned him to death.
Oh.
And,
Wow.
you know.
So we're dealing with this like very rudimentary, like savage ways of thinking that are still present in this time and age. And it's so interesting for me to see, you know, like all the different views that we get, like especially in a town like this where there's so multi cross-cultural, like we have the Mayans, but we also have the Westerners coming in. There's like a mix of so many different ways of seeing life. We have the Mayans, the people that still practice their tradition, but we also have the people that are against that, like the Mayans that are evangelized and that are like more
they consider the traditional practices
witchcraft.
Yes.
And it's such a interesting place because there's a little bit of everything. There's the spiritual seekers, there's the spiritual elders, there's the people like you know, that come here to really hold the space in a bigger way. And it's a place where a lot of contradictory ways of being and thinking crisscross. So I can see how that can be challenging to balance all of those ways of being.
And we've got people from the Middle East and South America.
From everywhere.
It's quite a It's quite a group.
Yeah. But nevertheless, this place, I would say, where we're sitting, your porch, which like played a huge role for the reemergence of cacao in a ceremonial way. But not only that, but like the lake itself, Lake Atitlan, where we are at with this magnificent lands, the lake, the volcanoes, all the energy.
And the basic vortex energy, as they call it, that this place is. It's one of the more powerful ones on the planet. There are lots of them.
Yeah.
But this is the one that, I ended up here.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to realize it, but I saw a map from the 1700s of the cacao growing areas in Central America, from southern Mexico all the way down to Panama. And the biggest area on the entire map was right on the other side of those mountains.
Wow.
And so but by that time I was into cacao. And researching it, and looking in medical and anthropological and chemical texts and stuff, and I realized I just happened to end up on the other side of the mountains from Central America's major cacao growing area for a reason. So here we are now, 20 years later. I bought this house. We live here now. And it's home.
Yes. Wow.
Well, we get an occasional hurricane here that causes a lot of damage, but oh boy.
Yeah. This is literally like piece of paradise. Every time I wake up here and I look at the sunrise with the lake and the volcanoes, I'm like, this is paradise. It's like heaven on earth. And not only this, but like we were speaking about it earlier, how we're thinking about bringing heaven to earth through all those prophecies, and the cacao prophecies and what we're doing, the work we're doing as light workers. And when we really open our eyes and look at the place where we're standing, earth, period, nature, wherever you're at in nature, we are already on heaven. And it's just the perception, is how we perceive the world and what we are creating through our actions and how we are honoring the earth or not is what creates the difference, whether you're living heaven or in quote-unquote hell, right?
Well,
but hopefully we're moving all more towards the heaven reality of anchoring that here. Well, okay, so just to close off today, I feel like we've had enough a beautiful conversation, and thank you so much for sharing everything you shared. And
I mean, it started as a curiosity, and it didn't take it very long until I realized that whatever this was, it was planet level. And I was going to explore what it was, and it's still growing. There is a professor, he's in California, his name is Lee, L-I, he's an Oriental. And he has been publishing documents that if you take cacao, and he doesn't really have good cacao, but if you take it regularly for about 3 months, it activates your stem cells. Which is huge. And that's just some of the latest research coming out after 20 years of research.
what would that mean? Like, how can you...
helps the regeneration of your organs.
That's why it's the biggest antioxidant in the planet, right?
Well, that's connected. Yeah, there's also the antioxidant thing. Well, hello. And so they're still coming out with more and more things about cacao. And I remember years ago reading the scientific papers where they analyzed different chocolates and found, the commercial chocolate has virtually nothing in it. Less than 1% of the active ingredients. And various other kinds of chocolate, some of the European chocolate, like Lindt, green and blacks, have a little bit more. And I think they analyzed some cacao powders and things like that they got at the grocery and health food store. And it came to all these conclusions about the compounds in cacao that have various effects on different organs of the human body. And that if you take it regularly, consume cacao regularly, in about 3 months or so, with cacao, at least with some goodies in it, the deposits are completely cleared out of your arteries. Wow. So there's nothing to break off and cause a heart attack or stroke because it's not there anymore. And then the cacao heals your epithelial membrane, which is a layer 1 cell thick on the inside of every artery, vein, and lymph vesicle. And it's considered a newly discovered organ in the human body. If you laid it out flat, it would cover 4,000 to 7,000 square meters. That's how big it is. And everything that goes into the cell, nutrients, oxygen, has to go through that membrane. And everything that comes out of the cell, waste products, carbon dioxide, all of that, all goes through this membrane. When the membrane gets stressed because of diet and various things you're doing, it starts to protect itself by coating itself with cholesterol. Apparently, coat yourself with fat, protect yourself. And of course now that's going to interfere with the absorption and the detoxification of your cells, even in the capillaries. There's nothing else known that does that. How do you get the fat, the plaque, out of your arteries? How do you reduce the inflammation and eliminate it in this organ called the epithelial membrane? How do you do that? There isn't any way known other than cacao. And my fun little thing in this, just as a wrap up, is to make the cacao that has more of those goodies that do that by laboratory examination than anybody else's cacao. That's my thing. Well, one thing we haven't mentioned is that some people might be interested in is the addictive possibilities of cacao.
Ooh, yes, it's so great.
And in my experience, you can get addicted to anything, and you can certainly get addicted to cacao, but it's different. It is more an emotional addiction than it is a physical addiction. And I've known people, and I'm actually one of them, who have had cacao every single day for about 10 years.
Wow.
And when you stop, there's no crash, unlike caffeine. There's no
withdrawals.
Yeah, there's no withdrawal, there's no negatives. You just, you stop, you have some more when you want it, whatever. And what I've found is if you have addictive tendencies, and many people do, and you get into cacao, the cacao, if you're willing to cooperate with the energies, the cacao will help you to deal with the belief systems or the energies or the understandings that are behind your addictions. Will help you deal with that. And then you not only are you not addicted to cacao, you don't get addicted to other things. And, we're having all kinds of people tell us that they start using cacao. They get off caffeine. They get off sugar. They get off these various other things that they wish to get off of. And I suppose part of that would be what you were talking about, where it helps you better tune in to your intuition and what is and isn't really beneficial for your body. What your body really does or doesn't want in that way. So, I mean, if you're going to get addicted to something and you feel like you're addicted to cacao and you want to work with those energies, the cacao spirit, or the energy that's in cacao, or whatever you want to call it, or the access she gives you to your own guides and your own higher self. I'm not attached to, I think it's different for different people. Will help you work with those tendencies within yourself, and then you're on the other side of them, and they're not a problem.
I've even known people who've, how cacao also helps with depression. I've known people who've let go of medicines for depression that they have been taking for many years with the help of cacao. I don't know the exact steps. Right?
Oh, we've been doing that for 15, 18 years here, is getting people off their depression meds.
Those meds are addictive, right? I don't know much about medicine.
Oh, they're
super addictive.
They do a lot of damage. It's subtle, and of course when you stop using them, all that stuff they've been pushing down generally comes up to the surface, and that'll send you right back to your meds. To get off of antidepressive, ADD, ADHD types of medication with cacao has to be done carefully. You can't just
cold turkey.
No. Well, I have seen people do that, but I certainly don't recommend it because of the explosion you get of all those things from within.
And how is a safe way that you would recommend to people navigating that shift from antidepressants to cacao, or no antidepressants?
You would basically, everybody's got to figure out the dosage on their own. Maybe they have some way they can test themselves. They use finger testing, or they use a pendulum, or they use but if they don't have that, they got to trial and error. They got to cut down their dose of their meds a little bit while they're taking the cacao. You got to find out how much cacao that'll work with them, and of course, with cacao's bitter. If you take too much, you're going to puke your guts out. And it's an awful experience. It's not like the purging connected to some of the plant medicines, which is beneficial. With cacao, I'll absolutely guarantee you, all you get is sick. And real sick.
But you need like crazy amounts of quantity of cacao, because I drink a lot of cacao and I've never had that. Like how much
everybody's
quantity?
Different.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so with this, as you gently, week by week, taper down on the amount of your prescription meds and use the cacao, which does very much the same thing as many prescription meds, but in a different way. And if you're on basically psychotic levels of meds, you're basically being treated for a psychotic condition, you've got to be real careful with cacao, because cacao does one thing in your serotonin and dopamine receptors, and your meds do another thing. And so they have a little war, and that war appears as a giant migraine headache for about 3 hours. That's a special case. But most people we know who are on, especially teenagers and stuff like that, young people, who are on rather moderate amounts of ADHD or whatever medication they're on, depressive medications, they can drink a full ceremonial dose and it's not a problem. And we've seen kids, teenagers, adolescents do that again and again and again for years. So it's not a problem. And for those that wish to get off their meds, for most of them, they're going to have a battle with their doctors and their parents.
Yeah.
That's just, that's how it is. We've seen a lot of people do it and come out the other side of it where they no longer need to use cacao because they've worked on the energetic, vibrational belief system, emotional trauma, inner child pain body, wounded inner child. They've worked on those issues to the point where those issues are not
there anymore.
Aren't running their life anymore. And giving them these states, I mean, depression is is an energetic state that forces you inside so you can heal. One of the teachers out there calls it compression.
Compression.
Like compress it, yes. Push you inside. Where on various other levels, including subconsciously, you work on your issues so that when you come out of the hole, you no longer have the depressive or their very, very much changed issues. So, in my experience, anybody that's going to try and use cacao to get off their psychological medications is going to need to be committed. They're going to have to want to get off of those medications. But I've seen people get off of 20 years of antidepressants, and fairly strong ones, not lithium or something like that, but real serious stuff. And
with the help of cacao.
Yeah, with the help of cacao, and
inner work, inner process.
Inner processing helps. Decent diet helps. Some cleansing helps. Yeah, you don't want to jump right into fasting because that will just basically hit the accelerator. But you can go through various kinds of heavy metal detoxes and things like that really help. Not that I'm trying to associate heavy metal toxification with depression, because I'm not, but it all helps the overall health. And that helps the whole system feel better. Now, I've seen people do it with just cacao and not doing any of that other stuff. It, in my experience, helps to seriously cut down on the caffeine, wherever you're getting the caffeine and the sugar and stuff, because they just, they just keep you, they keep you in another state of energy. Some people can't do that. Some people have to wait on till the depression is down, because basically they're using sugar or caffeine as medication. And so you take that away, and that's not going to help. But I've seen cacao be a lifesaver for people.
Yeah.
We've been selling a lot of it for people who used to take what in the offices are called afternoon Adderall.
Wow.
Which is a stimulant. And you get to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and your tail's dragging, and you take an Adderall. And now they get to 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They have a small cup of cacao. They finish their day and they go home and help their sweetheart with dinner. And, instead of being in crash mode. I had an interesting experience with this long time ago. I got this email from a lady in New York. And she said, this is back in the days before computers. or before computers are what they are now. When there were actually stock traders on the floor. And it's one big super high stress. I mean, maybe only war is more stress than being a stock trader. I don't know, but she wrote and she said, I want to thank you for your cacao that you've been sending us. My husband used to use cocaine to stay ahead of everyone else. And then after work, he'd have to go out and have 5 or 6 martinis to come down from the cocaine. And then by the time he got home, he needed to crash. And then get up, have dinner, and go to bed. She said, he no longer uses cocaine. He uses your cacao at work. And she said something to the effect of, as a stock trader, you got to be 1 split second faster than anybody else, or you don't make money for your firm. And she said, he's faster.
Wow.
that he gets the insight about where the pattern is going, where the flow is going, and knocks down the trade way before somebody else does. And she said, he comes home, he works in the garden, he plays with the kids, he helps me make dinner, and we generally make love at night.
Wow.
And he could never do that. And not only that, but he's making more money.
Wow.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yes.
I wish I'd have saved that. I don't even know if I could find that email at this point.
Wow. I feel like this is very inspiring, because we can see now how cacao is truly good for everyone, and it's changing lives in every place. Like, you don't have to just be a healer or a facilitator to have it affect positively the work that you do. But we can see it, people in the stock markets, like you said, like business people. You were giving so many examples earlier of people that do everyday jobs that is supporting them to be more efficient and to be more better at everything they're doing. So this is fascinating. It's really amazing.
Well, we have everything from people that work out in the gym to people who do, long distance marathon type of stuff.
Helpful.
I mean, you drink a cup of this stuff, you're going to have 40% more blood flowing
to your
brain and to all the cells in your body. Now, that's going to do something. In fact, that's the very first thing the scientists ever did with cacao, is they took some rather average cacao into an old folks' home. They gave the old folks a cup. They watched their brains wake up with 30% more blood flow. This is just average cacao and an average cup. That was the first thing, scientifically, that I know about anyway, ever done with cacao. Some of these people were in wheelchairs. Some of them were a good bit, had dementia, were senile, and they watched their brains change. And, they had all the equipment to measure that sort of thing. They weren't guessing. And so cacao is what they call a vasodilator. It opens up your blood vessels in your veins, your arteries in your veins. But your blood pressure drops. You get more flow through those open veins, but with less blood pressure, less work of the heart. Maybe there's something else that does that, but I sure don't know it. I certainly experience that when I go for a hike. Not only do I have that extra blood flow to the muscles and stuff that I'm using, but I have more appreciation for the bird songs and the patterns of the leaves and that leaf that just happens to be floating down the creek. It is just, it's there's more aesthetic beauty in the world around me. The rocks are different.
So true. Cacao really tunes you up. Like, now that you mention it, really tunes you up to beauty and to harmony. And I feel like this is also, personally, with my close circle of people, they happen to be very artistic people, like musicians and artists and everything. And I see that this is already people that are very attuned to beauty. And even people that perhaps before cacao had not fully accessed those talents or those capacities before, and that through cacao have now encountered that they have such talents or have enhanced their talents for beauty. Like, I put myself in that category because I've always been attracted to the arts, but I didn't consider myself so much of an artist. And through my work with cacao, I use it a lot to like enhance my writing, because I love writing. I'm writing a book right now. Well, for many years I've been writing it. I love, like, it helped me open my voice. So now I sing. Not the best singer, but I love singing and sharing that with people, and it helps me be like more connected to my dance and to my inner artistry. So I really see that connection, when you were mentioning.
I hear this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
In every way possible. It's a facilitator for whatever you're excited about. And it seems to work without side effects. If you don't take so much you get sick. Because it is bitter. And
how is it for the liver, speaking of?
There is some controversy out there, but basically bitter things are good for the liver. If you look through an herbal, for the plants listed to help the liver, almost every single one of them will be bitter. Some of them extremely bitter. And the people I know, and as I said, I'm one of them, who have taken cacao regularly for a decade or more, no liver problems have shown up. And I did, in the middle of that, we knew the place I was staying, we knew the head nurse at the lab. And she offered me a free blood work. And things about the liver were, in the normal range. They were quite healthy. And then that was literally after a decade of cacao use.
Wow.
So I couldn't guarantee it'll affect everyone that way, but it didn't cause any problems to my liver.
Okay.
And, and having like chiropractors and people like that work on my body occasionally. They get in there and they poke the liver and see if it's hard, see if it's soft, because that tells you a lot. And it's always been normal. So about the liver, about the kidneys, I've seen all kinds of stuff out there. And basically the cacao spirit tells me it's pretty much irrelevant. There's always the exception to every rule.
Yeah.
So I can't make a blanket statement, but there doesn't seem to be any difficulty with the bowels, the spleen, the pancreas. It helps diabetics, type 1 and 2. It helps with insulin resistance and things of that nature. It helps with mental issues, from brain fog to some serious things. It apparently is very, very helpful before you get a cancer. Seems to be less helpful after you've gotten one.
So it's good to prevent. Well, thank you so much once again.
Thank you. This has been delightful.
Yeah.
You're an excellent interviewer, and I've been back here with a lot of them.
Oh, wow, thank you.
And
I'm just starting this journey, so that's really an
good.
honor.
Well, I hope your podcast takes wings and flies.
Thank you.
And please give CJ and company a big hug for me when you see them.
I will.
Woo.
And they will hear you and feel it through this. Thank you so much once again, Keith. Truly, truly, always an honor to sit with you and Barbara in your home. And just so you know, like, cacao has really changed my life completely. And people here that listen to my podcast will know, and people who know me know how deeply cacao has changed my life. And I always like to sit with the roots of that, and right now I'm here sitting with the roots because at the end of the day, at least from the lineage that I come from where I got introduced to cacao, you are the root, and I wanted to thank you personally and to honor that, and for you to know that you are greatly appreciated by so many of us, and
thank
will
you.
Always be.
I'm blessed. I'm honored.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you found it supportive, educational, and inspiring in your journey. I'm sending you so much love as always, and until next time, namaste.